Hey everyone, welcome to Soul Cafe. Aaron, welcome. Good to see you from
Good to see
Atlanta,
you.
Georgia. How's life down there?
It's good. We've had a run of really beautiful weather, so
We
that's
have
all
to.
good.
About to get
Yeah.
hot. Is it going to get hot there this week?
Yeah, it says it's about to get in the 90s, but
Right.
I don't know. The humidity has stayed away for a bit,
No, it's
so
supposed to creep up this weekend. That's
yeah.
that's what that's what makes it. I mean, even here too. You
But we
could.
don't have the cicadas, so
Oh no, this has been cicada week. So
yeah.
yesterday they started. Well, some people told me they were coming out earlier, but
Yeah.
I think it's because they weren't here 17 years ago and they don't know what they mean by that. So yesterday and today they've started to emerge. I think by the end of the week we're going to
The
see the
humidity will get them out.
yeah
Yeah.
we're going to see the millions and billions of them. It's
Yeah.
going to be exciting.
Yeah. So no, it's great here. Our pool opens this weekend, so we're excited. Kids are out of school Tuesday of next week. So summer is, I'm having a hard time adjusting that, to be honest, because I'm a after Memorial Day, after Labor Day type of summer person. So working with this very mid-May-ish to early mid-August thing is just not, it's going to be my downfall. But
It's going to change here next year. They're doing the same kind of thing, starting
yeah,
mid-August. And
I can't do it. It's
well, we didn't grow up that way. Come on.
ruins it, ruins it.
We got out mid-June and then we didn't go
Yeah.
back until after Labor Day, right?
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
way it worked.
I kept missing each district as they were changing it. So, like, right as Loudoun County started early August, we moved to Fairfax County. Right as Fairfax County moved to late August, we got into Falls Church City. So it's like I kept skipping and moving away from the school districts changing to before Labor Day, but can't outrun it now. We're here for good. And so we're just trying to look at we're like, well, okay. We usually go to the beach at the last 2 weeks of August because that's always when it's quieter and a little bit
Hmm.
cooler and cheaper and everything. Now we're
It's
going,
because it's because everybody else was back at school back in the day.
exactly. So now we have no idea what to do. We're like, oh gosh, all right.
Yeah, I've always been a beach guy in August too. I always thought
Yeah,
if you
so much
saved your
better.
vacation, when I was a kid, we went 3 weeks every August, and
Yep.
I've kind of continued that trend.
Yeah.
And now this year, I'm like, okay, I think the startup in the fall is going to be really important for us this year, and
Yeah.
I would encourage my staff to front load the summer, and I did it too. So we're going to be going early. We're going to be going in June this year,
Yeah.
and then what's going to happen is by August, I'm going to need another vacation, not have
I
it.
know that's the thing is
Yeah.
like if you take it too early in the summer. So I told Cyril, I said, well, maybe we'll plan some sort of getaway in June so that the kids actually get like beach. I was like, but then I'm finding my way to the Outer Banks at the end of August, even if it means
That
I'm
is a
going
long
alone.
drive for you now.
It's 10 hours. I'll do it. It's
I
my
think you're going to
beach.
need a
I'm not.
chopper. You're going
I'm
to need a
not.
chopper to pull this
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. See if I can afford that
10
now.
hours is a long way. Come on. That's
It's about 9 hours. It's not fun, but I mean, that place just holds such a special, so much transition and so much change this year. I feel like I told Sarah, I was like, I can't just scrap Outer Banks for a summer. Like that's
can't take
my
it. Can't
place.
take
It's
anymore.
my,
No, you need to go to like what
my
is it, St.
piece.
Simon's and St. John
Yeah. We might go
Islands
explore a
down
little
there.
bit.
There's some nice
Yeah.
places there.
Yeah. No. I'm looking forward to exploring other places, but the Outer Banks is just, Duck is my family. It's where my parents, Stone is and everything. I've just got to make it there. So I will make it there. I'm determined, but we are
Well, I
doing
said a few
it
weeks
together.
ago in my sermon, I was saying, everybody says, "Where are you going?" I'm going to the beach, but that means something different for everybody.
Yeah.
So our next door neighbors, they grew up north of here, and they always go north. They go to Bethany,
Right.
Dewey, like those beaches. We did that in college with some friends, but
Yeah.
those are not. That's not
Yeah.
the beaches. And
Yeah.
you talk to somebody from New Jersey, and it's the Jersey Shore. God
Right.
knows that's not the beach. Whatever that is, it's not the beach. Somebody's going to hit me immediately on
Right.
this, but
Yeah.
it's fun.
Hey,
It's when I was at Princeton, I did it, but
yeah.
it's not the beach.
Yeah.
And then some people, they're talking about Florida
Everyone here goes to Florida. Yeah.
or
30A, whatever that
the
is.
Redneck
The
Riviera,
Redneck Riviera.
Destin,
And I'm
that
like,
area, whatever. And for me, it's North Carolina. I mean, that's
North Carolina.
all my life. That's where I
Yeah.
went. So I always say I'm going to the beach.
Yep.
It's clear to me where that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's short. Well, you're at a part of North Carolina where you have the wide beaches. I'm the part that's completely eroded, so the beaches are very short. But
Well, it's happening almost everywhere down there now,
yeah.
but Sunset is still pretty wide.
Yeah.
But from there to Duck is not far as the crow flies. I've
Yeah,
said
as the
this
crow
before, but
flies.
if you actually measure it, but to
Right.
drive there from one place to the other,
Yeah.
not 10 hours, but it's a long way.
It's a long way because I think you have to come inland, right, and then go back out.
Absolutely. Got
Yeah.
to go all the way
Yeah.
up and all the way across the
Yeah.
bridge, and
Yeah.
there's no good way to get there. So
Yeah, well, I'll still make the trek, but
Okay,
we'll have to
well,
see how I'm going to do it. Yeah,
and
but
you're gonna
otherwise,
still make the trek up here to see us once in a while.
of course, I'm planning a trip in July, I think. Maddie wants to get back and see her best friend, and we have a friend of ours who had passed away. We celebrate his life every year in July, and so I'm said, all right, well, that looks like a good time for us to get home. So,
Okay,
maybe
well,
third week of July, maybe.
I mean, the red house is still empty. It could be an Airbnb.
Oh, good, I love it. Yeah, let's get a blow up mattress in there.
Like we
Give me
should
an
set it up as an
Airbnb.
Airbnb right beside a church in
If the
Falls
green
Church, Virginia.
if the green church truck is available, I'll take my rental car and my Airbnb, and we'll be good to go.
Rental cars are the problem this year. I mean, we've had friends.
I
already-
know.
Yeah.
A friend of mine's going on a trip. It's $1,100 for 5 days of a
No,
rental car.
200 or more a day. It's insane, right?
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Crazy.
You may as well get there, buy a used car,
exactly.
drive it around,
Sell it
sell
again.
it before you leave.
You can't find used cars these days, though. Like, you'll pay a lot for those too.
That's a
Everything's
problem,
more
too.
expensive. Yeah.
Except Bitcoin is cheaper today. So anyway, there you
Yeah,
go.
Doge and Bitcoin. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see what Aaron's got for us. If he's here, is he here?
He's here.
He's
He
here.
was there. He had a lot of
He's in a
bike
different
helmets.
location today.
I think he might be out on his porch. I want
Well,
to
he is, but it's a different place on his porch than
I'm
he's
taking
been
a guess.
before.
Yeah, because it's all the bike helmets I saw.
Yeah. Well, when you live in a mansion like he does, you just move around from
Yeah.
space to space, right, Aaron?
That's right. Shea Torgerson. That's where I live.
He's in the
Yeah.
bike helmet section of the house. It looks like
That's right.
That is a lot of bike
that
helmets.
is a lot of bike helmets. How
Way
many people?
more than we need. Way
How many
more.
people live in your house?
I'm not sure how we.
Oh wait, and Mandy's hat. I see Mandy's hat on the very back top.
Oh well, this is that's actually another bike helmet, but it hasn't
Oh.
been taken out of the wrapper yet. Like it still has the,
Oh,
Just in case.
you know.
You got one. You got one on hold.
Yep.
Big Lots had a special. You picked one
The
up.
problem is that I have kids and they grow, and then they don't fit in their stuff anymore, and
Right.
we haven't gone through and gotten rid of the ones that don't fit.
Their heads are getting big.
I know.
Yeah,
Yep.
happens.
Figuratively and
and, yeah,
Well,
and physically.
that happens, doesn't it? What do you got for us?
oh man. So you know how I usually operate it. It's like whatever's stuck in my head, that's what I'll usually play from week to week. So I've been listening to a younger guy. His name is Parker McCollum. He's a Texas country music person, and in Texas country, he's like the top or close to the top. But of course, nobody's ever heard it of him outside of Texas, probably. So, but anyway, I got 2 of his songs today that have been stuck. in
Cool.
Yeah, so it's new material.
Like
New
it.
material, yeah.
New material. All right, take it away, man.
This first one's called Pretty Hard. I didn't think I was a bad guy. I knew that you were good. You were golden on the inside, and you loved me the best you could. I'm the one that dropped the ball, got too high and let you fall. Let the best thing I ever had slip away. And what does that say about me? I could do you like I did, and I could break an angel's wings. What does that say about me? And I stood there like a fence post as you drove off in your car. What does that say about me now that I've rolled your pretty heart? Your pretty heart. I've been drinking like a drunkard all lights, burning smoke and wondering if there's anything I've done right. And I wish I could go back and hang on to what I had. Guess it's all been nothing but a dream. do you like I did, that I could break an angel's wings. What does that say about me? And I stood there like a fence post as you drove off in your car. What does that say about me? Now that I'm broke, your pretty heart, your pretty heart. What does that say about me? I could do you like I did, that I could break an angel's wings. What does that say about me? And I stood there like a fence post as you drove off in your car. What does that say about me? Now that I'm broke, your pretty heart, your pretty heart, your pretty heart, your pretty heart.
All right, that's pure country. That was the most pure country in a while. So,
You think so?
yeah, you're in a country mood. I mean, summer's a country season, don't you?
I like that. That one's out on the radio right now, right?
Yeah, it
I like
is.
that song.
It
I
might
like
be.
it.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good one.
Yeah. What's up? So is the next one the same sort of genre?
Same guy. Yep. Same guy. Same genre.
All right,
Yeah.
let's go.
This one's called Young Man's Blues. Used to run down County Road 2854. Now I'm the boy that don't come around no more. Sometimes I wonder if they even still remember my name. Light a cigarette and roll them windows down. You can hear them diesels humming straight out of town. What if I'm scared to go back? What if I've nothing to say? Well, it just might be the hardest thing I do. Yeah, well, I can't seem to shake these young man's blues. See them double gates swinging out wide. Nowadays that iron fence don't seem so high. Wonder if that rodeo man still lives across the street. Don't want to say goodbye, but it's time, I guess. Next time I drive by, I hope it hurts a little less. Growing up now, that's all it's cracked up to be. Well, it just might be the hardest thing I do. Memory lane won't let me roll on through. Well, it just might be the hardest thing I'll do. Well, I can't explain young man's blues. Used to run down County Road 2854. Now I'm the boy that don't come around no more. Sometimes I wonder if they even still remember my name.
Nice, man. That one snuck up on me. Usually I can tell.
Yeah.
I can tell when you're
held it
about
in.
to wrap up, but that one snuck up on me.
I cut out a chorus, so.
You got cicadas in your yard?
We have quite a few, but some of the neighborhoods. I take our dog on a really long walk most days, like 45 minutes to an hour long, really brisk walk. So we cover some ground. Some of the neighborhoods close by are just disgusting. Like they're
Well, you're going to be.
covered with them, and they're just like they're bushed on every surface.
Yeah, you're going to be. They're like a carpet. Yeah, it's a matter of time. Somebody told me that happened in a part of Falls Church this past week, but for us, they're just coming out now. So
Yeah. Weird. And some people, I'm wondering that there's been a lot of development. So the places that got dug up, I'm guessing like might not have as many, but
I don't know.
Don't know.
Erin's feeling sad. She's going to miss them.
Nope, not true. Fake news.
I think they're kind of fun, personally.
My neighbor's dog is eating those things like potato chips.
They do. Our dog just ate them right off the bushes. It was like you just walked
Yeah.
up and there was a buffet, but the squirrels and the birds and the rats.
What's really funny
Everyone
though,
loves them.
this house where the dog loves those cicadas is they have this really big long fence. It goes around like I don't know half an acre. It's big, and if you look at the outside of the fence, it is covered with cicadas. If you look on the inside of the fence, it is pristine, clean, wiped dry. There ain't nothing there.
The dog licks it clean.
That's right.
You know you live in Northern Virginia, Erin, when somebody says it's like half an acre, huge, enormous.
That's huge. For my neighborhood, that is gigantic.
I know, for all of our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
All right, man, we love you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We'll see you
Yeah.
soon.
All right.
Take care.
Good seeing you, Aaron.
Okay, you tell us about our return guest tonight.
Yeah, so just like last week, we have a couple of return guests this evening. One is Ray Chang, who we met when we did an episode around Asian American violence.
It was a great episode.
Yeah, it was a really powerful episode. And then we also have Guy Land joining us, who was with us on the episode we did about Appalachia, I sent out a mass communication. I should just make sure everyone knows, not mass, I picked probably about 10 to 15 people who had been on the show before that I thought either would have some really compelling, interesting things to say about their topic area, based on, just what we've seen. Plus, a few people we actually interviewed in person back when we were in person before the pandemic even started. And Ray and Guy were the first two that got back to me and said, we'd love to do it. And I thought, well, this is perfect because they actually had two topics that are actually still so very relevant, but also have seen so many different things happen in our culture alongside the pandemic that I think I was just going to be super interested in hearing about. So,
I think the episode we did with both of them in a way, but the one we did with Ray turned out to be really prophetic. I mean, It was like, we turned our heads and we were suddenly thrown into the midst of a greater awareness, either pro or con, depending on how people felt about it, but a greater awareness of violence and anger against the Asian community in the United States. And so we did that before that all happened, which is incredible to think.
Yeah.
So Ray, tell us what's happened since you were on.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me back. It's great. You were certainly early on in the discussion. I think we were having the conversation. I don't remember what exact month it was, but especially as time went on, the violence escalated in some significant ways to the point of us seeing multiple deaths, especially in deaths and killings in the time of July, like around from October to January, and so. And so it's great that you're having these conversations because these conversations need to be had in basically every church. And we're finding that the more these conversations are had, and not just a one-time type of conversation, but a sustained conversation, the greater the awareness is around some of the problems that we're seeing. And of course, the more that the church is able to intervene where it can, and that Christians are able to intervene. And so it's great to be back with y'all.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have you back. I mean, that was a meaningful discussion that night, but it was just a couple months before we were. And by the way, I've seen your name everywhere since then. I was saying earlier, I was proud to have had you on because I've seen you quoted in a lot that I read, and things that you said here that we're in a different context. So, glad you're here. And then, Guy, how about you? Catch us up since you were here last.
Well, I think the COVID experience has accentuated things we kind of already knew about Appalachia, but hadn't fully focused on, both the negative and the positive. I think the thing that has, in the intervening time since you convened this group on that topic, the renewed interest or new emphasis on climate change policy, which you had a terrific panel on, gosh, within the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think, talking about this, which has major implications for the people who live, the 25 million people who live in Appalachia. And what is occurring is an awareness that there are community implications for policies that address climate change, and that a thoughtful approach to that topic requires looking at what are the impacts in communities that have been heavily dependent, for example, on mining. As you shift away from that, what are the impacts on those communities and the individuals who live there? And what are the strategies to mitigate the adverse consequences of a broader shift in thinking about climate change and reliance on fossil fuels? And I think that has actually put the Appalachian region more squarely in the national conversation than it was 9 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Guy, I'm curious as when you all are because you are part of an agency that is it 100% funded by the government, or is there a private, yeah. So did you feel that there was much of a shift? I mean, I don't know if you would feel it only, less than 6 months into the administration, but did you feel quickly there was enough of a shift in how you need to be looking at that area? Or, I mean, how is, obviously now the pandemic's coming out, but also we had an election. So it's like a dual issue here. And I'm just curious if you've already felt the shift in priorities that you're being given for the agency.
The quick answer is unequivocally yes.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there wasn't an interest in the challenges of the region in the prior administration. There was.
Yeah.
Because of that emphasis. But there is a much more aggressive government-wide focus on the region now, that is being driven directly from the White House and through multiple agencies that we are one partner in. That is a significantly changed conversation. Remains to be seen what the consequences are, because we're in the very beginning paragraphs of that discussion. But it's a different context now, and I think that promises good things for the region if people are thoughtful about how they tackle these challenges. Thoughtful both at the federal level, but also at the local community level as well. And then what's the role of the private sector in helping undergird some of this activity? Because it's got to have private sector engagement if it's going to be sustainable over the long term as well.
Absolutely. So Ray, if we can kind of shift over to the conversation real quick with you, and we'll go back and forth because I think we'll have some roundtable questions to sort of throw around. But as Jim said, we had you on, I think it was midsummer. So there was certainly a lot of attention being paid to Black Lives Matter, and that was starting to envelop minorities in general. And also then, of course, the words that were used by the former administration around the actual pandemic and around coronavirus and all, we sort of had those types of topical conversations. But as you were saying, things really ratcheted up, maybe not in actual violent acts, but ones that we were finally talking about and bringing to light. Because what I've learned a lot is that, we just weren't talking a lot about a lot of some of these things, so some of them, obviously the Atlanta shooting was a large one and was put on the paper quickly. And frankly, that was one where I was really saying, I'd love to have this discussion, because it immediately to me, it looked like it was more targeted towards, potential sex trafficking and things like that, which does disproportionately affect Asian American and Pacific Islanders. And so I was curious, how did you feel about like the temperature shift? Did it feel like, thank goodness people are finally paying attention, this is an issue? Or did you even feel like, oh, the water's boiling up a little bit now, more than I felt in the past. Like, how did that shift for you?
Yeah, around Atlanta, especially you're talking
Or,
about?
yeah, or just, the
Yeah.
last 5 months, or I'd say
Yeah.
October to January when we were starting to really, and through February or March was the shooting in Atlanta. Like, to a lot of us, it felt like all of a sudden the water was boiling. And I'm not sure that that's the way it really was. And so I'm just curious how you experienced it from just talking about it to now it's a headline, everyone's paying attention to it. It's becoming as big of a topic and married with Black Lives Matter and an area where we really need to pay attention. And I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, you sitting in it, how you experienced it.
Yeah, so I would say, at least for me and those of us who are kind of engaged with the discussion and watching kind of the rhetoric ratchet up and watching the narrative kind of work its way out. One of the things that we, like I think from early in 2020, we felt the acute concern and fear and the variety of emotions that comes with any sort of um, racism or discrimination or prejudice being directed towards your members of your own community. And so we saw that happen and then we released a statement. For those who don't know and are kind of tuning in, I lead an organization called the Asian American Christian Collaborative. It was mentioned. You can kind of go on our website to explore more. We have a bunch of resources, articles. But one of the things that we did early on to start was to release a statement, which many people across the country signed, and really served as like a framework for how to think about the rising violence due to the rhetoric and a variety of other kind of anti-Asian kind of racist sentiments that people might have held, that were really triggered through the rhetoric around China virus and Kung flu, because it played on historical tropes against the Asian American community that that perceived us as a yellow peril or as a virus that was constantly infecting the West. And so that all resurfaced. And then I think, rightly so, a lot of attention shifted towards the African American community, which needs to be sustained as we continue to go forward, even without the incidents. And so it was incredible, actually, to watch the entire world respond to George Floyd and the many others who had been killed. And then, the overt recorded violence against Asian Americans started to kind of die down. And, in history, one of the things that you notice is like you try to take notice of patterns, and the patterns for the Asian American community is that, that when major issues don't affect us broadly, we become invisible to the societies that we're in. Our plights and our pains become invisible. Our the sins that are committed against us become invisible. And so it seems like almost every 30 or 40 years, something significant happens to the point where the Asian American community would say, hey, we need to address these issues. And they're not big enough for many people to address or direct their attention to until a Vincent Chin happened, in 1982. And then until a 9/11 happens and, everyone who is South Asian is automatically considered a terrorist, or until COVID-19 happens and something major happens, and of course you go back to the Japanese internment or incarceration, and then the Chinese Exclusion Act, and then other incidents in between. One of the things that I think we are struggling with is how do we sustain the care, right? How do we get people to continue to care when the news cycle burns out, or when these things are not being kind of promoted from the media outlets or from television or even from kind of major leaders throughout the country, because that's what we felt towards the end of the summer, towards the end of the fall, middle of the fall, the attention against the Asian American community is dying out. There's still violence and hate being directed at our community. It's just not getting a lot of attention. And then we started seeing a series of our elderly get shoved, pushed, and then die as a result and get killed as a result. We had multiple people that get attacked in a variety of ways. I mean, and then some of those started surfacing in the media, and then and so attention started to kind of get drawn back to our communities. And then Atlanta happened, and Atlanta was really like a an awakening moment for many, especially Asian American women, because in the narrative and in the story of what happened with Atlanta, from the shooter's like faith kind of background, his explicit kind of discipleship within the church, then his logic around purity and killing temptation or getting rid of temptation. And instead of going to, for example, like a sex shop or, you know, like a store that sells pornography, he chooses to go to these businesses and shoots these women, many of whom were like in their middle age, and were working to like cook the food or, you know,
Right.
clean the shop. And how the narrative shifted to, you know, like, you know, him attack, you know, like in some ways becoming like this warrior for justice, to purify the land
Right.
of sexual temptation was kind of remarkable, because it was used as a narrative to almost scapegoat the underlying kind of gendered racism that often plagues the women of our community, who are often fetishized, objectified,
Right.
viewed as temptresses or as sex objects. And those are very explicit things that consistently happen, to the point where, you know, like many of my friends and colleagues, you know, experience like the wrath of men when they don't respond by giving, you know, them their phone number, or, you know, they feel like men feel entitled to their bodies because,
Right.
you know, they're viewed as sex objects. And so, you know, that really led to a significant awakening for many people. It shattered a lot of people because they had many experiences that were similar and fell in line with the same kind of logics. And then, and so we at the Asian American Christian Collaborative organized simultaneous prayer rallies in 14 different cities, all in conjunction with Atlanta. And so some churches in Atlanta said, hey, we want to do something, you know, can you help us? And so we went in, and then it was actually an African American woman here in Chicago who's a part of the Jesus People movement. And she said, hey, her name is Tiana Coleman. She said, can we do something in Chicago at the same time as Atlanta? And I said, why not? And because of that, our team here in Chicago mobilized, and then LA, San Francisco, New York came together, and then 14 cities in total mobilized to have simultaneous prayer rallies all throughout the country. And we've been continuing to do the work and doing the education and dealing with kind of the malformation that has taken place in a lot of our churches.
So with the Atlanta thing was fascinating. There's so much I want to explore here. One thing unique to me about the violence against Asians is this violence against senior adults. I think that's unique to the hatred of we see lots of racism. It seems to play out differently. How? It just astounds me that someone would see a senior adult as a worthy target for their anger, even if they despise their race. That's fascinating to me. The Atlanta thing was so intriguing. I preached a sermon on it, which I think Aaron was still there. I know Guy heard it. And essentially everything you just said, I said in that sermon. It was fascinating people's response. So to me, if there is a weak link, if there's a chink in evangelicals' armor that's bigger than any other, it is the tendency to individualize all sin. All sin is individual. There's nothing systemic. There's nothing corporate. There's nothing that we all participate in. There's nothing we all perpetuate. It's all about my individual purity. So a lot of people's reactions mirrored that whole story. That is, they responded to it in an individual way. So, I said in the sermon, be careful not to make this all about sex, because that's not what this story is really about. And the reactions I got told me that some people really did see it that way. And were questioning my reaction to it. I'm like, well, this is what I see. I think it's a systemic issue. It's much bigger, et cetera. But, it is fascinating to see how people want to stay away from any notion that there's something larger. I don't want to call it nefarious, because I think this is not a conspiracy thing. It's just there's something entrenched. But I didn't really ask a question there, but maybe you can react to some of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's one of the challenges of kind of like Western Christianity, is that we individualize our our faith in ways that isn't actually grounded in like what we see in the Bible. You know,
Right.
our faith is always communal. It's always it's relational, right? And so it is deeply personal, but it's not individualized in the way that we think it is. And you know, there are systemic forces which, you know, we see being called powers and principalities that are consistently trying to draw us away. And so even like talking about like, you know, like what Guy is, you know, bringing up, how we treat the environment affects people, right? And so if we pollute the environment, it's going to impact people whether they are next to us or in the state over. And we see that consistently in a variety of countries. How one country chooses to pollute the environment affects the neighboring country, to the point where even like in Chicago. So I live here, and I'm pretty sure this is the right story. I remember going on the architecture boat tour. It's beautiful if you ever come to Chicago. Definitely worth doing. And they would say that at one point, the river that went into Lake Michigan that connects to the state of Wisconsin would flow towards Lake Michigan.
Yep, flow the other way.
And then they blew something in the ground. They blew a hole in the ground, and then it reversed the flow so
Right.
that all the pollution went into Wisconsin. And so now the state of Illinois is paying Wisconsin a certain amount of money to deal with the pollution. And I'm like, nobody's benefiting from any of this.
Yeah, it's a famous
know?
story. It's the only time a river's ever been reversed in the United States of
So
America.
it's true. I'm glad you know that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, when it comes to the Asian American issue, it was I don't even know. It was jaw dropping to see how many Asian Americans, period, but Asian American women more specifically, all felt the same way, like all throughout the country. So it didn't matter if they were in LA, if they were in Chicago, if they were in a small town, if they were in a large town, if they grew up in Kentucky, or if they grew up in New York, if they went to a small private liberal arts college, or they went to a large public state university. It almost kind of like unlocked a collective conscience
Yeah.
that made a lot of Asian Americans feel like, oh my gosh, we have to be talking about issues of race. This is Asian American Christians too. We have to be talking about issues of race because this is how racism has affected our communities.
It's sort of it pulled something forward that was beneath the surface, I think. My son-in-law is Taiwanese by background, and he says that it's amazing to him that I probably shouldn't quote him here, but he does. He says it's amazing to him that people should feel racial animosity against Asians who have worked harder than anyone who ever came to this country to assimilate, be a part of the culture, make a positive addition, not complain when it was tough, etc. And I think what I saw in this was that there was just a lot beneath the surface that people had not given voice to. And this opened a box. It just it all came flooding out. I don't know if I'm right about that or not, but people perceived it was new. I don't think it was new. I think it was newly visible.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's a part, even in kind of like what your son-in-law is saying. I think that's a part of like our racialization process, is that we were racialized to assimilate in believing that if we just assimilate enough, we'll be fully embraced as American. And then what a lot of people are realizing is that that's not actually true. It doesn't matter how many generations we are here. And this is where you look at like the Japanese American community and how, like for the Japanese American community, the World War II and the mass incarceration was a significant turning point where they realized, oh, we could be here for 4 generations and we're still not seen as American.
Right. Fascinating. Really interesting. I think the common tie here, and this is what Aaron, I think, was driving at before, is that what creates an underclass or a class of poverty or someone who hits a glass ceiling very quickly in one place is very similar in some ways. Its impact on people and how they react to what it is in another. So, of course, the irony is that if we were talking to people in Appalachia, we probably would find a number of people who would share some of these animosities. But my experience has been that there's a competition at the bottom, more or less, of where a culture pushes people to determine who will compete for their spot in that pecking order. And then other people look at it and go, "What's the matter with you people?" Well, it's created by the system. It's a pushing down into a bottom, like you have an aquarium or whatever, and there's only so much room in that space. So when you deal with folks who've lived in poverty in Appalachia, I think you're dealing with some very similar kinds of issues, even though it's very different, even though it's very distinctively different.
It's still marginalized, yeah.
Still marginalized.
Yeah.
Just the jokes are different. The perception is different. The marginalization feels the same to people who are experiencing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
and
I think
Guy, if you know a lot about if you even think, Ray, like what you're talking about is the way in which Asians actually made their way into the United States, it is very similar to the story of how a lot of Appalachia was settled. And, a lot of Appalachia was settled by people who were either indentured slaves, white, albeit, but they were coming over. They had to work their way out of their enslavement, or they were coming out of famine, or they were coming. It was not the lords and the serfs that were coming over to create their new kingdoms. It was mainly people who were coming to say, "Let me just have a piece of land and give me peace, and I'll just work really hard for my own thing, and I'll just stay here." And
Well, and a lot of Irish immigration.
Irish immigration is
one of the
about it,
things one of the things nobody seems to remember anymore or realize is that in a foregone era, the Irish were the hated immigrants. They were the ones who were the threats. It's amazing that it's been colorized now, because
Right.
if we look back in the history of the United States, they experienced the same kind of marginalization as immigrants that
Right.
many other people have.
So it's interesting, like what's this? Harper's.
I want to show
Yeah.
you guys something. This is actually great because I love that Guy is here talking about Appalachia, because I think this is where the discussion on race often breaks down. Because
Right.
like if you think about race, and what race does is it creates a hierarchy based on on certain kind of characteristics or certain kind of features. And so this is a Harper's Weekly from 1879, and in it you see things about how the Irish are not wanted; they're foreigners. You see how there's notions, kind of signs about the KKK and African Americans. But then if you look around here, there's also something about how people have a know-nothingism of the past, down with the Irish, down with the Dutch, because when a lot of people came to the United States, they weren't classified as white. Right. And so Irish were not considered white. The Dutch were not considered white. We know that African Americans were not considered white. And anyone that was not considered white was placed in what you call the underclass.
Mhm.
And it was when it became convenient for certain people to be considered white that they would extend the offer to the Irish or to the Dutch to consider themselves white. What's challenging about that is that, there is a sense of kind of economic definition that defines what we might call whiteness.
Mhm.
And so this is why I think racism is actually killing poor whites. The way that those in Appalachia are often kind of neglected and ignored, it's because it's too inconvenient to actually address their problems in a society that elevates one group and then pushes other groups down. And so poor whites, people don't know what to do with them, and they don't want to be and
I know the stereotype I've heard about you. That's all I need to know about you. I can move on to something else. And the challenge that I think all of us face is to say, no, that doesn't work. It can't work in our society, and it can't work in our individual lives, because we've got to burst those stereotypical barriers if we're going to be effective in reaching the needs of people that we come in contact with every day. And over time, it's a long process, but that is how you begin to dismantle the stereotypes. You don't have a stereotype about somebody you know. It doesn't resonate with you.
Right.
And the challenge is to expand the knowledge you have of individuals who are in communities that are easily stereotyped, so that you no longer convey that stereotype in your rhetoric and action. Hard to do, but we have to tackle it. And the heck of it is, this is all occurring in a time when the role of organizations and institutions has diminished greatly, which could have mediated against some of this. The David Brooks Second Mountain theme of the rampant individualism that has devastated the ability of organizations to be mediating structures or something like that.
And mediating relationships. So,
yeah.
we can become, it's interesting, you become so individualistic. Relationship is the way to conquer a lot of the polarization and the problem that's happening. But relationships get brokered somewhere. There's a place we meet people, a place that I share this institution, I share this thing with someone, therefore I value them, therefore I have a conversation with them. And so I think you're right. When all that breaks down, when everything from governments to churches becomes much smaller in the landscape, there's nothing to mediate relationships between people who don't know each other otherwise.
And by default, that leads you to the tribalism that we see today.
That's right.
Because those mediating institutions and organizations have withered.
Right.
Yeah.
And by default, now you're being brought into the tribe, and that becomes your sole point of identity.
Right. This is what I was talking about before we come on. What we're seeing that people need to, I was talking to my staff Monday, we need to see the tribalism for what it is and the tribal markers for what they are. People don't even understand they're expressing a tribal marker. And in many cases, the hatred of another group of people is a tribal marker. It's a way of saying, I am the real deal. I'm here. Because I denigrate the persons who I don't perceive to be. Somebody's got to be out in order for me to be in, or that's the perception. And I think you're right, Guy. Tribalism it's the name of the game right now. And until people see it for what it is, until the cloak is pulled back and people understand it, they won't begin to wonder, why do I act this? Why am I responding to this way, when it's completely irrational and illogical for me to do so? And the way people respond to COVID has been a tribal marker, one way or the other.
And one even like in a very strange way, because it was always, I don't know that it falls along party lines as everyone has thinks it does all the time. Like there's been, very different reactions, and I've even been guilty of being like, oh, I'm surprised you think that way. I would have assumed because I do think we've created this cult of personality around the way you vote is now an identifying thing people write about themselves. I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and Dak Shepard always says it. He's like, I just think it's so odd that people put like Republican or Democrat, for instance, in like their profile on social media. I mean, to identify like, hey, every 4 years I vote a certain way as like now an identity is such a strange concept that would be a way. And so because we've created that big marker as an identity, we are starting to divide into camps, when if you think about liberalism typically being a little bit more around community, conservatism, conserving institutions. And like back in the day when those two could combine, the community with the institution, the public, private, individual, corporate partnership was a lot easier to figure out. Not that we haven't always had division, we've always had division, but I feel like that's where we are now defining, I want institutions to stay, or I want community to be everything. And it does need to be a combination. You do need to individually take responsibility for how you are behaving within society, but your individual self needs to then combine with the collective to make.
Well, the parties have been radically reshaped, and that's because the tribes are shaping the parties.
Yeah.
And frankly, churches too. People are choosing churches based on their tribes.
Yeah.
So the tribes are shaping the institutions rather than the institutions brokering change in the tribes. But anyway, that's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
We could, let's hear from these guys what they have to
Yeah.
offer. Maybe they have something that fits that. But I would suggest to you that racism becomes a tribal marker. It's not just. I think we oversimplify it as I denigrate a group of people. It's a mark of my tribe, and I think especially when we talk about the Asian issue right now, I think some of it has to do with two conflicting world powers. And with people saying my mark of pride is America first, that means I'm all about white people or whatever it is that they say, or nativist or whatever they say. And they lump everybody into this one category. That's the other. But it is really, in a way, it is a simple way of stereotyping my tribal identity.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would add about like institutions, because I am concerned about the state of our institutions, is that I think you can really find a lot of it to the failure of leadership and the lack of integrity that we've seen. Right? It's true. I mean, we continue to see that with inside and outside of Christianity. Those who we used to be able to trust, we can't because their character falls so short, and they're the ones that are leading the helm. Mm-hmm. And then the consistent experiences of people within institutions or organizations or entities based on markers that aren't considered like historic or traditional or at the center, often like find themselves to be like, okay, this is not an institution that's for me or not an organization for me, which is why, for example, a lot of people of color would leave a certain type of organization or church. Like it's the failure of leadership that I think is like leading to the deterioration of a lot of this. And then the lack of humility that we're seeing to actually move and transform the institutions, especially Christian institutions, to be more faithful in representing the kingdom of God and in living out of its Christian convictions, moving towards what Jesus would call us to in terms of loving neighbor, and then seeking the welfare of all people. And so, I just wonder if it's like, I don't know if I necessarily blame people for wanting to distance themselves from institutions. What my hope? No,
I don't either.
Yeah, is that people would, at least those who are at the helm of institutions, would move the institutions towards greater integrity.
I would say, however, even what you just said is a stereotype. So in the news cycle we live in now, that stuff gets spread far and wide. I think there was a day where that would get isolated, and you knew your pastor, you knew your church, you trusted your pastor, your church, or whatever. That doesn't happen anymore. There's a broad brush that's painted over government. Politicians are this, pastors are this, lawyers are this, seminary people are this, university people are this. It's a big broad brush over everything. And so those stereotypes that you were talking about a moment ago, Guy, they get painted everywhere. So, clearly what you're saying is absolutely true, but not universally so. And so what exactly do we do? If we're sitting in, you represent an institution, I do, Guy does, 3 different institutions, academia, the church, and all of them are losing clout. What exactly do we do to try to elevate the community building possibilities of institutions when all around us, we are being failed too by our co-leaders? That's what's happening.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously there's going to be people that are faithful, and usually the stories of faithfulness don't often get told, and that's because they're not sexy, right? Yeah. And so we need to do a better job of telling the stories of faithfulness without discounting the stories of failure simultaneously. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that we, at least with AACC, one of the things that we're finding, and we're really grateful to for the grace of God in all this, is that not only are we reaching kind of Christians broadly, so Asian American Christians, and then Christians broadly with the work that we're doing, but as we're trying to like really reimagine what an organization or an institution like ours, I don't know if we're called an institution yet, but I think we're moving in that direction. Like one of the things I've been really encouraged by is like how not only are Christians finding kind of comfort and energy and encouragement through the work that we're doing, but what the work that we're doing is actually also attracting the attention of civic leaders, of political leaders. So from small towns that I work in to the city of Chicago, which asked me, the mayor's office just recently asked me to sit on their commission, to our senator, one of our state senators' office reached out and said, can you participate in this? To the national government or to the federal government, they're asking us to participate in some of their activities. I'm like, why would you invite a Christian to do any of this? I'm like, we have Christian in our name. And, the most consistent thing I hear from like their staff, for example, is that, oh, we see the work that you guys are doing. So it's like, we see the good work that you are doing, and we're basically attributing it to your faith. And so even with the invitation from our mayor's office, they said, we've been watching the work that you've been doing, and we thought it might be good to have a religious perspective at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, so maybe that, it's like there has to be a kind of like a public, I think we have to shape the public witness, which I'm even like, if you think about like some news that was announced recently, Russell Moore, who's a friend of, I think all of ours, maybe, he's moving from the ERLC to do public theology with Christianity Today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's exactly what we need more of. We need more public witness, public theology, public engagement, because the witness of the church is so
Powerful.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, he had a strong push from behind by the church, so it's a whole other episode too. But yeah, I mean, of course, I think he's one of the most faithful voices we have right now. As close to unbiased as it gets in evangelical Christian circles. So yeah, it's a fascinating moment in that sense.
I think we need passionate vision tempered by what I would call realistic expectations. You run into trouble for an organization when you've got the passionate vision, and without the tempering of realistic expectations, you quickly lead to disillusionment when the vision isn't achieved.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we've got to be able to, no organization is perfect. I'm actually thinking back to some of Jim's declarations from Sunday of dealing with the reality of the human condition,
mm-hmm.
that are the people that are leading institutions. And we've got to always be careful that we don't oversell the individual organization or institution or individual leaders'
mm-hmm.
capacity. Lest we set them and ourselves up for failure down the road when, for whatever reason, they don't achieve what the expectation that we had set for them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, we took in our IG this week, we took your parable of the soil
mm-hmm.
as
that was Jesus, by the way, not me.
that the reasonable expectation was only 1 out of 4.
Mm-hmm.
Not that all 4 out of 4.
That's what I said. 3 to 1. That's your ratio.
But if you'd started out with the sower having the expectation that every seed I'm sowing is going to yield great crops, shortly that sower would have been enormously disillusioned and probably would not have picked up the bag to sow seeds again.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be leaders or sowers, as it were, we have to understand the reality of what, not losing the vision. The sower had the vision the entire time, but understood the reality that not everything is going to germinate and grow the way we wish it could. It just won't.
Yeah, that story is fascinating. Of course, 3 to 1 is the ratio of those who actually receive and respond. But what is the ratio of the production of those 1 and 4? 100 to 1.
100 to 1.
So
yeah.
it's finding pockets of health and strength.
Right.
It's focusing on those places of health and strength and building on those, and being able to drown out or in some cases ignore the rest of the noise while you're pushing through. Yeah. Well,
Yep.
I could talk to the two of you all night, and I would love to catch up with both of you separately and see what's going on. And thanks for the work you're doing. Seriously, Ray, I've been proud to see how often you've been quoted, and your quotes are profound. And Ray, the work you are doing honors us. And Guy, the work you're doing, you've plugged away for years, and everybody I know who has worked with you always says you're the best mentor they've ever had. So I've got a lot to learn from you. It's good to have you both.
Action.
And I'm honored to be on the next to last of these series with the inimitable Erin.
Aw, you're too kind, guys.
She's magnificent. She is, and she's been a trooper. I thanked her last week on the show. I was like, I can't believe she pushed through for 21 months of doing this, because we don't, this isn't our full time. Neither of us. This is what we do all the time. This is a big piece of it. Well, I mean, if we had a broadcast going here and we were popular out there, and we could give away cars and stuff. We could we'd be making money on advertising here, right?
I know. I wish I could do this all day long. This is my dream job, but yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, and I'm glad you two were two of the guests that were here for the second to last, because two of my favorite guests. So
you both honor us by being here. Thank you to both of you, and Erin, thanks to you, and thanks to all of you. It's good to see you on Soul Cafe, and we'll see you one more time next week, and then we are taking the summer off. We are, Erin, right?
Yes,
taking
we
the
are.
summer off, and then we'll see you again. Best to both of you. We'll see you soon. Bye bye. God bless everyone.
Bye-bye.